Welcome to the Marvelously Uninformed. So I'm your host, Scott, and I'm here with Mo, our resident Nick Fury, so to say, and then Nick, who what I would say was more of our resident Reed Richards. And Mo, you
Oh,
have
wow.
no idea what we're talking about, but I gave you a big title there, Nick. But we are here to take you guys on a journey through the vast cinematic universe of Marvel, exploring the unexpected leadership lessons tucked away in epic battles and some of the more complex characters. Now, two of us, and you'll probably get to realize which two, are not comic book experts. But we are ready to attempt to dive into the stories of all of these heroes and villains alike and see what they can teach us about leadership. Luckily, there are no superpowers required to do this. So join us today as we share laughs, leadership, and a very delightfully uninformed perspective on what it really means to lead and what it means to lead through this story of Iron Man. So whether you guys are a diehard fan or you're just curious about all the buzz or for a different perspective, just get ready for some fun as we uncover the marvels of leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe together. So let's jump straight in. So I know we've got Nick, who knows a little bit about, I would say not a little bit, but more than all of us about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we've got Mo, who has no idea, who pretty much just knows how to spell Marvel at this point. And so, Mo,
Allegedly.
I know it was your allegedly. I know it was your first time seeing a Marvel film from start to finish. And I remember, and I'm sure Nick does, I remember what it was like when Iron Man first came out. It was one of those things where it was like, wow, they've tried superhero movies before, and we had years of Batman movies, which are so, and I'm not going to say Batman Begins because those are a different level, but I'm talking like Kevin Costner, like I'm talking about Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, like they're so bad that they're good. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. But we had all those superhero movies that didn't necessarily bring us into something that was actually engaging to watch. Like they were just fun. But Iron Man really started that and brought things in. So Mo, just what is your initial take on this first experience that you had?
Yeah, well, let's start with the most important thing, which is what I was eating as a snack throughout the movie. I know that was an important thing that we all talked about.
Mhm.
And I had the lesser evil popcorn Himalayan Gold, which is like buttery and it's supposed to be healthier for you, but when you eat an entire bag of it during a movie, it's probably not. So that's the popcorn that I chose for this movie. I will choose a different snack for the next movie, which I will reveal. I don't even know what the next movie is, but I'm sure I'll find that out sometime. But my initial thoughts were pretty cool. I like a lot of people. I just thought to myself, man, to be Tony Stark for so many reasons. I mean, am I the only one who thinks that? That guy is like the
No,
coolest guy that I have ever seen in my life.
That's
yeah, you're
the whole
100%
point.
correct.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you this, and you got to remember all my notes are chronological. I took notes during the movie, and I was not ready for the opening scene, hilariously, where I'm like, what is going on here? And all of a sudden, he's in Afghanistan, right? And I was like, dude, what's going to happen here? Obviously, something crazy is going to happen. Here's one thing in that scene. I think he uses, like, that one kid in the back of the Humvee wants to take a picture with him. And he
Yeah.
says, just don't put it on MySpace. I was
Yes.
laughing so hard. I'm thinking, dude, that's how old this movie is? It's MySpace?
That's
So anyway,
that was a couple of things rewatching it myself where it's like, wait, that didn't hold up. Oh, that didn't age well. But it's entertaining because we went through it ourselves.
yeah. So I would say my initial thoughts, Scotty, just for the whole thing was, wow, I want to be Tony Stark. Two is if we take that opening scene, awesome. From the very beginning, I liked how they kind of took that first scene and it just explodes and then it takes you back in time a little bit and then moves back up to that scene. That was awesome. I had no idea about the suit, how he came to be. I don't know if that's how it was in the comics. I mean, so maybe you guys can help me out with that. So it was kind of cool just to have a zero perspective on this and just, wow, it was awesome. So, I mean, what about for you guys? Like when you saw it for that second time or 40th time, or how many times have you guys seen this? Like, what do you guys think?
So I'm like the middleman in the podcast where I haven't read a ton of the comic books at all, but I've seen all the Marvel movies and I love them. But one of the things that when I was kind of rewatching it and then also being like, all right, man, what are some things that are new that I never knew about this? But one of the things that I found out and that I read is that Robert Downey Jr. actually improv'd a lot of his lines throughout the movie. Really just to add that kind of unique charm of Tony Stark and give that character life and make it kind of more relatable and entertaining. And so that MySpace comment was more than likely just improv by Robert Downey Jr., which also speaks to just like the age of these actors, because today kids will watch that movie and, and I've got a 1-year-old, right? And when he watches this movie in 10, 15 years down the road here, whenever he is able to sit still, he's going to have no idea what MySpace is. Heck, he probably won't even know what Facebook is at this point, but it's one of those things where I will always find funny, and it'll be one of those things that I'm sure all of us will just laugh at for years to come, just because people don't know what it is anymore.
No, rewatching it again and again. I remember the first time I saw it because we went to the theater and saw it, and it was kind of like, I almost kind of like, do I really want to go? Because it was like, Iron Man in 2008 was not a popular character. Iron Man as a comic hero, even though his comics had their own individual title, it had been struggling in sales, but Marvel was still holding on to, hey, he is an Avenger. Like, we're not canceling an Avenger, right, from their own title.
Yeah.
The MCU, like, that's pretty loose. Or pretty, I wouldn't say loose. It's not exact to his original origin about the suit, but the reason he had to come up with, the arc reactor, and the reason he had to do those things, which it wasn't an arc reactor then, because it was 1962, right? So it really was, okay, let's modernize this so it makes sense to this generation. Like you said, even forgot about the phone. Like, the way it flipped up, so it was like here and here, and it was a T, and it was like, dude, he's got satellite on this? Like, that's not possible. Like, but it was Tony Stark, he's smart enough to do it. But yeah, I remember like, I don't know if I want to watch. I'm like, okay, but then I was like, oh yeah, that worked. And it only worked because it was Robert Downey.
Wow.
Yeah, 100%.
Am I allowed to ask the question, Scotty, about the reactor? Because that whole thing, him with that thing in his chest, I still don't understand that. I tried to understand the whole movie, and I don't get it. So are we there yet, or do I got to hold that comment?
I mean, no, like, you can ask about the arc reactor in his chest. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Like, it's just a mini, I don't know, Nick, how do we put this? Like, it's like a mini, like, nuclear power plant kind of in a way, but in a different sense.
But why did he need it? I know that guy told him, like, oh, this is keeping shrapnel out of your blood, out of your heart.
No, out of your heart.
I was like, why couldn't he just do something to save him and then keep his regular heart without having to put a big I don't get why that had to happen.
Mm-hmm. So in the cave, we're in the cave. In the cave, it was a car battery hooked up to magnets, keeping it moving. So it kept the hair-like size of shrapnel from entering his main valves of his heart. And that's why they called it, he called it the Widowmaker, or again, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact choice, because it's a slow death. Like, you're just going to die because these things are going to slice up your heart and you're boom. So it's keeping it away from his heart so he can still function, because they couldn't fix him in that cave. But
now he needs that forever? Like, that's something he couldn't get back home and be like, oh, I'm a multi-gazillionaire, now I'm going to, like, fix this?
I mean, I suppose he could, but
That's a great question.
Like, it wouldn't help the movies? No.
Yeah, it doesn't help the plot, okay?
It doesn't help the plot. Like, there has to be tech advances as the movies go on.
All right, I guess.
So he had to do it that way, but then he knew we'll kind of pull a little something. He knew that arc reactor technology existed, and he knew what was in his weapons that he was selling to them. So
okay,
that kind of leads to a line we'll get to from later in the movie, which I think is just absolutely hilarious, and one of my favorite lines in the whole MCU.
And also, it's kind of curious if you think about it too, like, because magnets typically attract metal, and so when I was rewatching it, and it's like, oh, it's magnets, like, it's keeping it from entering your heart, and I was like, but wouldn't the magnets pull the shrapnel towards it, or did you find like a polar opposite magnet? You just happen to have a polar opposite magnet like lying around that is going to push the magnets or the metal pieces away. I always thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, Mo, you did bring up a good point. Like, it is kind of like, well, why couldn't he just, pull it out. And as we get into more and more of the films, I think that question, just keep that same thought in your head. Because as we get into things and you see throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, some of the technology that exists, it's like, wait, why couldn't he just pull these things out right when he got back? But
well, it's just keeping it. Maybe it's if you think about it, maybe it's just keeping it moving rather than settling and move. It's keeping it in a polarity, moving in think of like from the Flash. You're keeping things moving in the circle rather than creating damage. We're keeping them magnetized and moving in this area where it's not doing anything. I don't know.
trying to imagine an
So-
area,
so
right?
Can I
Like
bring
working-
up the since we're on that whole cave scene or whatever,
Yeah.
like his relationship with Jensen, how
Mhm,
deep that
mhm.
goes, because Jensen saves his life essentially, right? He wakes up and he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you." He's gonna pull that battery out of your chest. But I remember, like, right before Jensen dies, and he's like, "This was the plan all along," you know. And just before that, I remember what my first favorite line from Jensen is when they're talking about family, and then
yeah.
he asks Jensen, "Do you have a family?" He says, "Yeah, I need to get back to my family." And then Jensen asks Tony Stark, he says, "What about you?" And he doesn't answer. And then I love what Jensen says. He says, the man who has everything yet has nothing. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, which set him up for when Jensen was dying, you know, when he just went straight beast mode and took that gun. He's like, "I'm going to buy you some more time." And he just blasting dudes. And then he gets hit. And right before he dies, Tony Stark's like, "No, we got to get out of here. Stick to the plan." And he's like, "This is the plan." And then he just looks at Tony Stark and he says, "Don't waste your life." And I was like, dude, that to me, from a leadership perspective, talk about influence. The influence that Jensen had on Tony Stark just in that short amount of time really made me think about who are the people in my life who I haven't known for a long time, but the relationship has been so impactful that, and I'm just going out on a limb here, and I'm not, well, I can speculate based on the rest of the movie, but it really changes Tony Stark's entire perspective on life. I knew in that moment that was a pivotal, like, foreshadowing. Don't waste your life. And for somebody who had everything, a multi-gazillionaire, by the way, I need the Tony Stark plane. I don't know what that is, but I need that in my life. It had everything. It was the cool. But for him to come home and everybody saw the change in him pretty radically. So I don't know if you guys saw that or cared about that, but you know, that was my first leadership instinct. You know, the law of influence is really what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, looking at it again after several viewings over the years, when he wakes up and he realizes they took him outside and the artistry of they take him out of the cave and his eyes are adjusting, right? So he's already had these conversations with Jensen. So he's already hearing something in his mind, that change in a philosophy. And then he's seeing Stark Industries on everything. And there were no words used by RDJ. It was literally just the way he showed, like, that was his rebirth. That was his awakening. The wool literally was pulled off of his eyes to where, like, I'm responsible for that. And that was, like you said, the foreshadowing. It is very much a change, and it was just how that set up the movie right there to keep going and the rest of going into second act.
One of the things that I kind of along your lines, Nick, that I found just kind of eye-opening in that aspect is the idea of what, and maybe not what, but how are you influencing in your life? Because if you think about it, it's not like Stark had his eyes opened, went back a changed man, and then all of a sudden is influencing. No, like, the man is world famous. He, you know, there's a part in the movie that he talks about, he hooked up with like every Maxim model or whatever, every month, calendar month for the year or whatever. And so, like, this is the type of influence that he's having. So when you think about, and we talk, you know, on our Rising Tide podcast, really all the time about how it doesn't matter where you're at in life, and it doesn't matter whether you think it or not, you always are influencing those around you. So what type of influence are you having? Are you having the influence of the original Tony Stark, where it's all about me? You know, I'm naive to the fact that my weapons are going all over the place, you know, are getting in bad hands. I'm naive about how I look in the public eye. I'm influencing children and and my coworkers and my peers and my mentees are all seeing how I'm doing versus when Tony Stark wakes up. It's just a completely 180 when it comes to that influence. It's not like he just started influencing the minute he got out of the cave. It's like, well, he's always been an influencer in a way,
Right.
and influencing and leading those around him. But now it's like, wow, I've been influencing in one way. Now I'm kind of shifting. And that's what I feel like that's what we see really kind of Jensen kind of wake up in him, and what we see as he kind of gets back to the real world and out of the cave.
So I wanted there's a couple other notes that I wrote down based on what you just said, Scotty. I love when Rhodey comes up to him after he's, he wakes up and stuff, and he says, "Next time you ride with me, okay?" Like that just true. Just,
Yeah.
you could tell, like, that was his way of saying, man, if you would have died, I don't know what I would have done. I would have blamed myself. Because remember, right before they're going to ride it in, before they get in, and I didn't even know what Tony Stark said, but he said something about you're riding in that other.
This is the fun V. The fun
this
V.
is the
That's
fun
what
V.
he says.
Fun V. Because he's got his scotch and he's got the guys and no gang signs, and he's just like, yeah, peace.
Yes.
Peace. Yeah, we all love peace. I'd be out of a job without peace.
Okay, so that makes even more sense to me, the fun V. But I just remember when they had that, but I didn't even really think about that until he wakes up and Rhodey says that to him. It made me think back to what he said. I was like Rhodey would have never forgiven himself if Tony would have, died. My other favorite part about when Tony Stark wakes up, and he's all defiant, and he's like, "There's only two things that I want right now: an American cheeseburger and," and then she cuts him off. And then, like, later on, of course, they actually get him a burger from Burger King, which was hilarious. So I was like, dude, that is total America. All I want is a cheeseburger. So, so I was actually at that moment, I'm like, I need a cheeseburger in my life.
There's a whole piece behind why it was Burger King and some more, it's not foreshadowing, but it's symbolism so now we're at that point where he goes back to Stark Industries and he's going to have his press conference. Right? Notice he sits down and tells everybody to have a seat, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
Okay, but see, if you think about it, when RDJ was at his lowest, and this is very public, right? When he was at his lowest, his last time he was arrested, he was speeding in his Porsche, naked, with Burger King and cocaine in the passenger seat. That was his rock bottom. So he's eating the Burger King and sitting down. He's at the bottom. But by the end of that conversation, he is standing up tall and he has confidence. And that was his symbolism for him and Favreau, who directed it. And actually, I don't know, Mo, you don't know this, Scotty, I don't know how well you know. Favreau almost walked away from the project because they weren't going to bring RDJ in. He said, that's our Tony Stark. That is our live action Tony Stark. This will not work if you put somebody else in there. And he was uninsurable. We can't do this. We can't trust the guy to show up to work. We can't trust, because he had a very public battle with some demons. And so the movie he did before that was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which literally was, we need you to do your job, show up to work, be the guy, do this. And he had already been on his path. So in a way, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark in that sense that he had that awakening and he came for it. So it's literally, he is using this art to show that you can, in real life, because people know this, you can become that person. You can change the narrative and that voice and show that leadership through example. And I thought that was, when I learned that and I realized that, I was like, man, that is some moving pieces to slip into a summer blockbuster.
Yeah, 100%. And Mo, just a couple other tidbits, just are kind of fun things. Originally, they were looking at Tom Cruise for the role of Tony Stark, and you can imagine.
No way.
Well, and you'll see, it's a good thing to log away in the back of your head because, right, like, this isn't the last movie that we have Iron Man in. Like, we know that. Like, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so as you see him in other movies and just thinking like, man, what would Tom Cruise be like in this situation? And then when we get to finally the end of the Infinity Saga, just seeing how that culminates and ends, you're just going to be like, wow, what if this was Tom Cruise? So one of the other things too, that Nick mentioned, Jon Favreau. Favreau? Is that how we say the last name?
Favreau.
Yeah. Favreau. Okay, Jon Favreau. If you remember in Iron Man, the guy that drives his car, right? His name's Happy Hogan. that is Jon Favreau. So that is the director of the film. And he's really the guy that's in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like he is, I'm going to use the George Lucas to Star Wars. Jon Favreau is to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not going to use Kathleen Kennedy. We will talk about that at a different podcast. We're not going to talk about that right now. It's going to bring up some heat. But all that to say, those are just some fun tidbits. But one thing I want to ask, and I'd love to get both of your opinions, is if you are sitting in the position of, if we're talking about that press conference, you're sitting in the position of Obadiah, right? His business partner, or Rhodey, like maybe Pepper Potts, but like not as big of an influence, but Obadiah, who is sitting there, now that we know as, foreshadowing the movie here, but everybody's seen it, that he's the villain and he's been kind of selling weapons behind, Tony Stark's back.
Spoilers. Spoilers, Scotty.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
spoilers. Sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie, it's over 10 years old. Just get with it. But all that to say,
No, this movie, people have seen. If I should be the last person who's seen this, so we're spoiling the movie. So we've seen the movie. If you're listening to this, turn it off if you haven't seen the movie, because that's what I had to do all these years because I never saw him. So literally every
turn
time
off and go watch the movie right now.
Yeah, go watch the movie. And I would say that I just watched it for the first time, but it's almost 20 years old, and I finally just watched it, and it was worth the watch, man. It was fun. So anyway, don't worry about spoilers. We've seen it.
Yeah. So just what are your thoughts, right? Like if you put your position in the position of Obadiah, the business partner, or Rhodey, who's standing in the back going, man, I'm the guy that got him the military contract. Like my job kind of hinges on him making weapons for the military. Like what are the thoughts just going through your head? It's like, oh, I got my buddy back. But then all of a sudden he just drops this bomb without telling anybody ahead of time. What are we looking at as far as those leadership implications, as far as just those feelings? What do you think, if you're in that position, is running through your head?
Taking it, like, I'm going to give it to you from all three perspectives. I think Rhodey is, I don't want to say happy, but he's seeing something in his friend, right? He's seeing something in his friend that is for the positive, but I'm sure there's going to be a little of that professional pull against it. Obadiah, obviously we know he was the villain now, but at the end of the day, like, that's not what he wants. That's not how they make their money, and that's all he cares about. Pepper's probably the only one that didn't care, but saw that he's okay, and he wants to do better with his influence. He wants to do better with it. I have the resources and the means to do things. Let's do it. And she's the only one that seemed like she was okay with that. My observation. Well,
so for me, obviously Obadiah, and I kind of knew this. Well, first of all, let me say about Obadiah. Obadiah is not Obadiah. Obadiah is the dude. Okay, I don't care if he doesn't have hair or not. This is
fair enough.
I was like, is that
fair enough?
I didn't know it was Jeff Bridges until he opened his mouth, and I couldn't take him serious. I'm like, okay, this guy's the villain, the dude. Like, come on. Like, I could not take him seriously as a villain. I'm like, dude, you were the Big Lebowski. You are the Big Lebowski. There's no way he could be a villain. So they should have given him a different part. They should have cast that somewhere else. I'm just putting it out there. Yell at me in the comments. It shouldn't have been Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is the dude. That aside, I knew that Obadiah was going to be ticked. I didn't know that later on we would find out that he was the one that sold him out and tried to get power taken away from him. That kind of got me. However, at that very moment in the press conference, Tony Stark Industries, not Tony Stark, at this point it was Stark Industries, it was bigger than him. That was everybody's bread and butter. And so obviously Obadiah and anybody else who makes money off this, millions and billions probably, like they're all thinking, oh, this is bad news. They didn't care about the good of everybody. And that was the character, the character piece for me for Tony Stark. And in fact, in my notes, it says it right here. I'm reading my notes. Tony is the freaking man. Freaking is in all caps because he pretty much just said, I never got to say goodbye to my father. My father's passed away. That hit different for me, for somebody who lost my father. And then kind of goes in this, would my father be proud of me? It's kind of what he was probably thinking. I could be wrong. Correct me. But then he says, I saw young Americans killed by the very weapons that I created. And as soon as he said that, I'm just like, it's over. And everybody listening at that press conference would have thought, this is over. There's no way. There's no way that Stark Industries can continue to do what Stark Industries does as long as Tony Stark, shockingly and ironically enough, is part of it. And so that's going to be the friction point right there. So Obadiah, obviously right there, I'm thinking, dude, they've got to get rid of him. There's no way. With Rhodey, what was interesting to me is when he goes to Rhodey later on to say, hey, I've got something big. And Rhodey's like, great, because he thinks it's another project for the military. And then Tony Stark's like, no, what he says something like, no, this is a personal one.
Mm-hmm.
And Rhodey, pretty much just he doesn't want to hear it, and that kind of it didn't make me mad, but I was like, he went to Rhodey in that moment, and Rhodey just thought he had PTSD and he needed to have more time away. And I was like, dude, that's like his best buddy, if he has a best buddy. But then again, when it comes to Pepper Potts, there's that scene, and I can't remember if it's right before that or right after that, but he pretty much says to Pepper, you're all I've got. Tony says, it's right after he says, hey, you got to take this thing out of my chest. And then she's like, oh,
how big are your hands? How big are your hands? How big are your hands?
And then she goes, how do I do it? And he goes, just don't touch the side. It's just like a game of Operation. Dude, I was dying. And she's like, what? And he's like, don't worry about it, because she's like, he's like, this chick's too young. So I was just laughing. But then he says, you're the only one that I have. And at that moment, you realize it's going back to what Jensen made him think about. And now he knows. He would have never said that to Pepper before that. I mean, what do I know about Tony Stark? And Nick and Scott, you guys can tell me if I'm way off base. But I thought to myself, wow, if he didn't have that time with Jensen, this life-changing, death-defying character, life-changing thing, he would have never said that. But he starts to get vulnerable right there. And of course, he still is suave, Tony Stark, in the way he does everything. But he gets vulnerable. And he's slowly getting more vulnerable as he does throughout the movie. So those are the three perspectives, Nick. As you brought those three up, I thought that was great. And I think Pepper was a little bit scared, not necessarily for the company, but for him. Because remember, she says, like, Tony, this is what you do. Essentially, this is who you are. And I think that's Tony's. He's like, I don't want to be known for this anymore. So I thought that was great. And just that tension with all three of those relationships was great for me. You know me, Scotty, I love tension. I think it brings out the best in us. So it reveals our character. In this case, that's what it was doing. So what do you guys think?
The thing that's popped in my head, can we just take a moment to talk about, so, right, when you talk about Marvel, and I mean, you talk about any film franchise, any book series, whatever it may be, there's always a villain. And there are some villains that are, cheesy, right? Like, it's like, I'm going to take over the world. And it's like, okay, that's a plot in like 500 other movies, 500 other books, whatever it may be. But then you've got Obadiah, and I would, and you guys disagree with me, and anybody in the comments can disagree with me, but, I've seen the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I would argue that Obadiah is one of the evilest people in the cinematic universe. And hear me out. Okay? And you can, I mean, obviously, Mo, you're going to hold judgment for the 1,000 other films that we have to watch. But, Nick, you can chime in. But Obadiah, it takes a certain person and a certain amount of evil to not only hatch a plot, right? But to hatch a plot in a way that goes against some of your greatest family and friends. And if you think about it, like, Obadiah had been Tony's dad's business partner. Like, he was there as Tony was growing up. And so you can only imagine that he was a part of Christmases and holidays and celebrations and, birthday parties and everything like that. And all of those years watching Tony grow up did nothing to sway Obadiah from betraying, from hiring someone to kill him. It just didn't faze him in the slightest. And I feel like it takes a certain amount of just evil in order to betray the person closest to you. And I know that there's some other, I think, very evil examples throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe for sure. But I'd put Obadiah up at the top as someone who's pretty darn evil.
I agree with you, because as we'll get to, there are a lot of different forms of evil in the world and the universe, and in some ways there are other villains that we'll come across that there becomes a reason for that behavior, or there's a trauma, or there's almost a science to it. This was full-on American Psycho sociopathic behavior, because it was about greed. It was about controlling that money, controlling all of this, and he didn't care who. I mean, like you said, I'm going to take out the closest to you. He was buying time, and if you go back, to when they show a different piece of where the group that kidnapped Tony and had him, which I want to make mention that if you weren't paying attention to it, there is, and Dave, now Mo, you're going to have to go back and watch a piece real quick. There is something in there that's a flag or a banner that has a logo on it that actually is a repetitive thing moving forward in the Iron Man and is part of his original Rogue's villains. But
So can I ask this based on that, Nick? So like you just said, I'll have to go back and listen. Like, would I and will I figure it out as I watch more of these? Like, will I watch 5 or 6 more movies and say, wait a minute? Or, like if I watch Iron Man again in a year
you know
or
what?
two,
No, let's do.
and I've seen more of the movies,
You're right.
Like, because you're telling me to do that because but nobody told you because you didn't know. So how did you guys find this stuff out?
But if those that knew when I watched Iron Man, I went, okay, that looks like this. But they haven't mentioned it, but I see this because I recognized it from having been a reader and knowing that was something there. It will get addressed.
You knew these things.
Right. And so there are Easter eggs of like, why did I see that? Or like, hey, this is this, or this could be their version of this. There's something that we'll get, it's farther down the line, but it's something with, I'm watching in the theater one of the Avengers movies with my oldest, and I hear a conversation and I kind of nudge him and I go, it's this, this, and this. That's the beginning of this. And he looked at me, what? I'm like, watch. And that it was just because if you're in the know, if you know, you know. But there's something to where they show the video of like, oh, we're holding Tony Stark hostage. They were kidnapped.
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying right now. I'm completely lost.
Okay. Fair enough. I got that
Scott's
mistake out of the way in
about to be
episode
done.
1. I got that mistake out in episode 1. So when in Iron Man, when you see the video, they're holding Tony Stark hostage, all the guys got their guns, and they're talking to the camera. There's another clip of that when it's translated into English, and they say,
yeah, I remember that.
We didn't know you wanted us to take Tony Stark. Now the price has tripled or whatever. So Obi set this up without even telling certain people because he didn't want them to know it was going to be Tony Stark. So he's playing chess with these people and everything for his own personal gain. He's so evil that like, who compartmentalizes their life and can just have that smile conversation and play the role. And in the back of his mind, it's like, this guy was not supposed to be here. This changes my plan. I have to move a different way.
Got it.
Well, let's fast forward to kind of the pivotal moment where Tony kind of finds out kind of towards the end there. And if we think about the like final fight scene, kind of sucked. And again, that's my opinion. And Mo, now that I think one of the things too that goes with that, if you think about, when Tony gets on his back and pulls the cables out and it ruins his, heads up display and the front part of his suit kind of comes out and so he can see. And, he goes, Tony, all I can think, like thinking back to that scene now is the dude, like him in a bathrobe with a beer and a cup of coffee going, Tony.
I'm telling you,
for ruining that movie.
And for all we know, they did that on purpose.
I'm sure they did. Hey man, I got a beverage here,
Gosh.
So,
well, fun. And I didn't know this, and I did not see this. I had to see something on social media over the years to where I went, no way. And I watched it. Go back real quick. The dude is in the lab at Stark Industries with the scientists, and they're standing in front of the giant arc reactor that Tony's dad built, right? And he goes, we just can't do it. We can't do it. And my favorite line, honestly, one of my favorite lines is like, Tony Stark did this in a cave with a bucket of scraps. Like, it can be done. Yeah, but I'm not Tony Stark. Like, it's just another way of saying how superhuman his mind and his intellect is. But that scientist is the guy who played Ralphie in A Christmas Story.
No freaking way.
The bald scientist with his glasses is Ralphie from The Christmas Story. The same dude.
Dude, I didn't even know that.
See,
dude, that's
I was like, when I saw it like on TikTok or something, I'm like, no way, that's not possible. And then I went back and I went,
wasn't that the same kid who plays in Elf? as the elf that gets
yes,
that gets Will Ferrell falls off that guy.
same guy.
So I actually wrote that as one of my quotes. I'm not Tony Stark. Just the disbelief that scientist had back to Obi to say like, why are we having this? Why are we even having this discussion? I'm not Tony Stark. But it was pretty cool. So the guy's a genius, and which actually probably made it even more like it was scary for the people who relied on him in his company, the bad guys that just were all about money. Because as soon as they lose Tony Stark, it really doesn't matter, because even if they take his company away from him, he's still the smartest man in the world, apparently. He's the Elon Musk of his time. And so he's got his mind, and you can't take that from him. So I that's kind of what I took from that. Now, with the fight scene, Scotty, you mentioned that. Here's what I didn't understand. When Obi jumps in that suit and all of a sudden he knows how to use it, my question is, what? Like, he'd never been in it before, or had he? Maybe. And all of a sudden he's just running around like, I'm like, dude, it was way too easy. Like, I get it, Obi's probably smart, but he's no Tony Stark. And he just jumps in that suit, which is like 4 times the size of Iron Man. And, they have that fight scene or whatever, and they're throwing each other around and stuff. And I'm just like, what is going on here? So it was wasn't anticlimactic, but
Well, and
it was, yeah.
I can't ask this yet, but I think it's in two.
Don't ask it.
2 podcasts. 2, I got a great question after we get through Iron Man 2 that relates to that. But all that to say, is Tony Stark really smart, or is the cave magical? Because if you think about it, they also performed open heart surgery in that cave. And like, the thought of like, oh yeah, we're in the middle of Afghanistan in a cave where like, nobody clearly showers because none of those guys change outfits the entire time that Iron Man is there. So like, they're either showering, washing their clothes, and running around naked for a couple hours, or like none of them bathe. But you've literally got, Tony Stark had open heart surgery performed on him, and then also built a suit. So like, that cave probably has magical properties if we're talking real. But one of the things that came to my mind, Mo, when you were just talking, is we always talk about like vision and mission, and how when it comes to leading a company, when it comes to leading your workplace, how you really have to have individuals aligned with vision and mission. And I would argue that prior to his kidnapping, not even Tony Stark knew what the vision and mission was of Stark Industries. It was almost like the only vision and mission was like, make money however we possibly can, without actually having that, where are we headed? What are our goals? What do we want to be seen like? And I feel like when he comes back and kind of through the rest of that movie, he's growing, right? Like, he grows throughout the movie, but he doesn't even do a great job after coming back of being like, here's the new vision. Here's the new mission. How really kind of, I've always seen the company, but never actually pulled people into that before. And I just think that's such kind of a critical moment. And I think you see that too, where you've got, obviously Obadiah, who, has his own vision and mission. But then you even got like the scientist, right? The guy who, builds a suit and is like, I'm not Tony Stark. And it's like, that's cool. But like, why can't he be empowered to be Tony Stark in a way? And so that for me was just kind of one of those things that just kind of popped up, where there's just, it's Stark Industries, there's a complete lack of vision and mission when it comes to really like, what the heck is the point of this company?
To go along with that, think of like Tony Stark was just the guy that thought of things. Like, how many times did he tinker with that hot rod? And they talked about, he built his first engine at 6, and he did this, he did that. Like, the guy's just inherently that smart, right? His brain functions at 100%, and the rest of us are at 10. But like, so Mach 1 is literally the cave armor. Mach 2 is the one he learns that he can fly. But he also learns that he had the ice up problem, right? And then he's managed to rebuild his chest reactor, right, at home. And he used the things he needed, and he did it, and had Pepper replace it. We're seeing him become, in my vision, and what you were saying, we're seeing that perseverance. We're seeing that adapting to grow. Like, so every time he did something to get better. And now that arc reactor is a new way. Now I've done this. And now you can go a different direction. Like, it's like, but he's so impulsive, says the guy that skipped an awards ceremony to play craps, right? A guy that, it's my plane. They'll leave when I'm good and ready to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the impulsiveness of him doing what he wants to now thinking about how it impacts other people. And that's when becoming a leader starts to take form and is hatched in his brain, I guess you would say.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And gosh, it's there's so much we could talk about. And Mo, you just haven't seen any of the movies, but it'll be really interesting to see and watch you kind of as we get from movie to movie, just to see you and watch him grow. And it's going to be difficult, right? Because right now we've got one character. We've got is Iron Man. And so it's like, all right, cool. I can watch Iron Man, but gosh, we're about to get so many other characters that are thrown in and have their own journeys.
Yeah.
So
is that? Let me ask a question. Is that frustrating for you guys, knowing that, like, I'm just fine. I'm sound as a pound. I'm happy. Like, that was a great movie, and like, you guys can only talk about certain things right now because you can't. And it's like, Mo, there's almost 20 years worth of movies, and you're in 2008 right now. Like, is that frustrating for you guys, or is it fun, or both?
Both?
yeah, we're having to choose our words very carefully and what we say,
Yes.
and we don't want to give any spoilers now. But it's something that we didn't talk about since we're now at the point where, okay, they saved the day and Obi's done and blah, blah, blah. Did you see that there was a post-credit scene in there?
Dude, I did, and I don't want to get to that yet. But
Okay.
I.
Well, no,
But
I just want to make
here's the
sure
thing.
you actually waited till the end. And
The only reason I would have known that is because everybody in the past almost 20 years has now
Yeah.
said you have to watch to the very end of the credits. But let me turn that question around to you guys. And so for those of everybody else in the world who watched it in 2008, how many people of a percentage left during those credits and then had to watch it a second time because somebody else went home and said, "Did you see the end of it?" Like, were people ready for that, or did it have to catch on?
Well, Nick, was it originally in the first Iron Man? Like, because I know the post-credits scene was shot after the movie had wrapped. At least from what I've read, it was one of those. It was kind of an afterthought to throw in that post-credits scene. So I don't remember if it was an afterthought like before release, and it was one of those let's do a post-credits thing, throw it in, or if it was one of those, man, the hype around this is real. Let's go with it.
I'm almost positive it was in the theater.
Okay.
Because and the only, it was in the original theatrical release because I did not do so. I have a friend here in SoCal that still, he's celebrating 20 years coming up, owns an award-winning comic store. And so up until the pandemic, that's really what changed it. They were doing private viewings, and somebody that knew somebody at one of the big theaters out here, like, hey, guarantee us these sales. We sold out a whole room. It wasn't always the best one, but we sold out a whole room, and you can only buy the tickets at the shop. So when you go, it's people that want to be there, people that are engaged, and they made it a whole little event for the night. And we had seen several of them, but I didn't go to that. So Chris, who owns the shop, told me there's a post-credit scene. Stay till the end. He told me to stay there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have thought to do that. So we did that, and I'm like, in a way, it is a throwaway. It could be something, it could be nothing, but now the door is open to let us go this direction if we need to.
Well, and I think I don't remember because I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm pretty sure I had absolutely no idea. But kind of like what Nick said, those scenes. Yeah,
there's
and
no
I
reason
mean,
to.
even now, they're right because I haven't sat through the whole thing because I thought it sucked. And this isn't I guess spoilers, but isn't there a post-credit scene after Justice League 2 or something like that? And it never amounted to anything because they cut everything. There's something like that. I feel like, right?
Why are we getting ahead of ourselves? We're in Iron Man 1 right now.
Okay, but
Dude,
Justice
League's DC.
completely different, bro.
Gosh, come on, Mo.
We generally should not speak of that film because it is so many things happened in that. But what's funny is it's like, here it is 2024, and Alec and I, my oldest, I took him to see Deadpool and Wolverine this summer. Like, I was like, hey, let's go see this together. And we know, of course we're sitting. At this point, you're trained to sit. You go to a Marvel movie, you're sitting till the end. And there are people that still and there's people that just get up still. And it's like, either you're not a real, I don't want to say real fan. I want to say like, or a lot of them are
Committed
younger.
fan.
It's like, I can leave. No, I can leave and get it on Instagram later. I could find it on the internet. It'll be there. It'll be on YouTube.
It's always on the internet.
Yeah, but to me, it's like, I'd rather see it in that viewing and like with the people that were there, because you get that instant gratification, or you get a reaction, or oh, they're going this way, whatever it is for whatever movie.
I'll tell you though, like there's nothing worse though, because most of I would say 80% of the post-credit scenes throughout these films are great. And there are a few that seem so throwaway. And there's nothing more irritating than sitting through an entire thing of credits only to see something that you're like, this didn't make me laugh. I don't feel like this had any relevance to anything. And it doesn't tease anything. And I sat here for an extra 10 minutes and I'm going to wet my pants. And so there's nothing more irritating than a bad post-credit scene. But that is not what this one is. This one is not a bad post-credit scene. But before we fully get into that, I just one thing that really bothered me when I rewatched this is at the end, right? Like you've got Obadiah that's like, move it to section, 18 underneath the arc reactor, and, makes it all secret and stuff like that. And they build this suit and they didn't ever think like, how will we get this out of the basement? Like there was never that thought process of, would this fit through the door? Because Obadiah ends up coming in through the parking lot and you're just like, who put it in this section and was like, how will we get this out of here? Like, does anybody ever think about it? It's just one of those plot things where I'm just like, more of that, I guess, business aspect where I'm just like, I don't think they ever thought about like how they would get that out of the basement. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it was big enough to get it in there because it was the building itself held that arc reactor, which was a giant like thing the size of a house. Think of like you're in an airplane hangar and you're underground. But
Like a big donut to me.
yeah, the real answer to that is that it's a comic book movie. Suspend disbelief.
It's totally unbelievable now.
A little bit
It's
of disbelief.
Like heart surgery in a cave.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, do soldiers perform surgery sometimes to save somebody's life in the field?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so then I mean, there is something is there. I was going to say that you're in a cave, and Mo, for all intents and purposes, this is an easy thing when you're dealing with comic books. Ideally, nobody's really guaranteed dead for sure. There's always because you live in the comic book world, you can bring them back somehow.
I love that. So at the very end, my favorite part of the press conference is or actually before that, when the guy comes in and
I know. Okay, go ahead. I know exactly what your favorite line is in the conference, but go ahead.
So before I get to that, with that guy who's just mysteriously been in the whole thing, and he's like, I'm from the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, and every time he says it, whoever he says it to says, you really got to get a better name.
Everybody says it.
For somebody who's never seen it before, at the very end when he says shield, I'm like, okay, now I'm getting it. And I'm like, I get that. For me, it was the same as The Sixth Sense, where you don't know that Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen that. But you're just like, I should have known that. And then at the post-credit scenes when Nick Fury, who I didn't know who Nick Fury was until, because I think Scott, you mentioned Nick Fury before to me, and I'm like, what?
Heck yeah.
But now
Samuel
that
L.
you say
Jackson.
Mo's the Nick Fury, and I don't even know what that means, but all I know is it's Samuel L. If you're comparing me to Samuel L., dude, I'll take it.
You're the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., sir.
Man, is that who that guy is, dude, with his cool eye patch? I'm like, I need to go get an eye patch. So anyway, back to...
We're so making you dress as Nick Fury for what
I was going to say that. The next
leather,
podcast featuring Mo and an eye
patch.
Dude, should I do it?
Already
that's it. So when we get together for the first Avengers, I'm actually going to dress like Nick Fury. Like, I'm actually going to do it. So anyway, but yeah, I just love it. That guy comes in and he's the kind of nerdy Homeland Intervention guy. And then they're giving him his cards, right? And then I wrote it down at the very end, and either just say this, we'll take care of the rest. And I'm like, okay, Iron Man. Okay, I guess we're not going to nobody's going to figure it out. They're going to probably figure it out in Iron Man 2 or 3 or whatever. And all of a sudden, he's just like, he stops reading off his cards and makes that joke. Hey, maybe this time I should read off my cards. Everybody laughs. I'm like, okay, that's going to be him being able to say what he's supposed to. I'm like, there's no way Tony Stark is ever going to do anything that somebody tells him to do. He says, so I don't want to miss it. He says, the truth is, and he stops, he goes, I am Iron Man. So I was just like, that's right, Tony Stark, you go. Like, don't let anybody tell you. But what's hilarious is that at the end with Nick Fury, pretty much, I guess they sent the director because they know this guy, Tony Stark's out of control. So we got to send in the big dog to say, you thought you're the only superhero? And I was like, dude, that is the coolest ever. So I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that.
I love
So
that
Nick,
scene.
was I right? With my favorite line?
Well, I'm not surprised. I thought you were going to go with where he calls himself a superhero. She goes, I never called you a superhero.
I love that last line because I feel like it just like, it's a great kind of conclusion to the film because I feel like, you see Tony Stark go through this whole change through the whole film, and it's almost like he's starting to get more and more humble. And so you're like, okay, like maybe he's going to not be quite as arrogant or things like that. And then he's like, nah, I'm Iron Man. And you're like, dude, okay, well, never mind. Like that's still there.
That's what it was, man. I was like, dude, that's exactly what I would have expected him to do. So anyway, I just thought that was.
Yeah. I have to ask, what was, if you had to pick your absolute favorite scene, what was everybody's favorite scene?
Oh man, Nick, you better go first because I'll have to think for a second. You probably know.
It's not a combination of scenes, but there's bits of it, and it is Tony interacting with his robotic arms in his garage. Because like he keeps threatening the one dum, he calls it dum. If you douse me again, I'll donate you to the community college.
That was good. Yeah.
But no, the point when he's trying to get out of the armor and he's all suspended and Pepper walks in, he goes, okay, let's be honest, this isn't the worst thing you walked in on me doing. Like, are those bullet holes? Like, that was like, okay, that's pretty memorable. Like, that's just a testament to where they are in their relationship and how they are as like co-workers together. But that was one of my favorites. Like, it's just kind of funny and throwaway.
My favorite, I love when he's, it's like after he first initially takes it, he gets the photos of the weapons and he flies across the world, which it's got to be fast. His suit's faster than any plane that we've ever known. Obviously, the shoots at the tank, it blows up. But my favorite is on his way back when he ends up getting chased by the Air Force. And Rhodey's on the phone. He's like, hey, is that you? Are you? And he's like, no, I'm driving with the top down. Like, and he's
thought
like,
you were jogging.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, I thought you were jogging. Jogging with the top down, like, and then he's like, no, and he's got to go or whatever. And then he calls him back and he's like, it's me. I'm in the suit. Like, tell him stop. I think that's probably my favorite scene just because he tries to play it off so well. And I just don't feel like Rhodey actually believes him. I think Rhodey's like, okay, well, he's telling me this, but I super don't believe him. And then he calls back, and I feel like Rhodey's just almost like, I knew it. Like, I just knew it. I knew it. You weren't secretive at all.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, I think for me, the first time he was down as he was making the suit, I don't know if that was necessarily my favorite scene. It wasn't like as exciting, but just his whole setup, like the Bat Cave kind of feel, in Malibu overlooking the ocean, and he's just talking to his computer, and I'm like, dude, he's got the setup, man. When Pepper comes down for the first time after he just has destroyed his entire downside, she's kind of like tiptoeing over all the broken glass. Like, what is going on here? So
he's
anyway,
not cleaning any of it up. It's just like still
no,
there.
he doesn't. That's what's hilarious about it. He's like, whatever. Who's gonna clean it up? Who goes down? Nobody, obviously. I guess he's got to do it or have his robots do it. I don't know.
So, Mo, what would be your final thoughts concerning this film? And then also, what are you most looking forward to? Because Nick and I, we saw the films in theaters. We had that thrill and that want of like, and in reality, Nick and I want to just say we had it worse because it was like, oh, that was so good. I can't wait till the next one. And it's like 5 months later. And so like, we had to wait for these films to come out, and you literally could go watch the next film today if you wanted to.
My final thoughts for this would be, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was great. I'm not going to give it a number yet. I'm probably going to do an IMDb write-up and just put my own stuff from a leadership perspective. But since I view everything through the leadership angle, you already know that, even if you don't know anything about Tony Stark, which I don't, and now I know a little bit, but you know that his character is all about influence. And like you said earlier on, Scotty, like he had influence, and now his influence is changing. what's interesting to me with all of this is John Maxwell always says in his 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that first you follow the leader, then you follow the vision. The interesting thing about this movie is that people followed him, obviously, because they followed his dad. His dad was the initial smart guy, and then obviously took over the company. And Tony Stark is a charismatic leader. Out of all the different kind of leaders there are, he's a charismatic leader. They follow him in his charisma. But the funny thing is in the very beginning of the movie, he loses that because all of a sudden everybody's against him. What's funny is, and it's not very often that this happens, I think, but people are grabbing up. They don't want to let go of the original vision. And Tony's trying to change it into a new vision, and he can't do it. And that's why everybody's trying to push him out and get him out of the way, because he is now no longer part of the vision. And so I think he loses a little bit of that leadership credibility, and that really causes him to find out, okay, am I strong enough to be the charismatic leader that I am and change this company into something new? So to the second part of your question, what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to see, can he really do that? Because obviously the vision of Stark Industries, even to this point, is still weapons of mass destruction that kill people. And I think that's why, in my speculation of somebody who hasn't seen any of the movies, that's why I think at the very end, he had to tell people I'm Iron, because he's taken this into a new vision, a new just beginning of what Stark Industries needs to be. If he didn't say that, if he didn't let people know, no, I am Iron Man, he wouldn't have that credibility. But now that people know he is smart enough to do this, he's changing the trajectory. He's writing the script. He's not letting the narrative of what his company is and was, or is probably going to have then.
Yeah.
He's saying, no, I'm Tony Stark. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you guys why you still need to follow me as the leader. And I really believe that, and this, again, my speculation, I believe that Tony Stark is going to be the kind of leader to say, this is the new vision, follow me. And I think people are going to follow it.
Love that. Love that. Nick, same question, but from your perspective, Mo watched this for the first time, right? So what are your kind of final thoughts on the film, watching it for, I don't even know, the 10th time?
As a movie, it was, I think, a very almost complete story, a complete movie. Like, it can stand on its own. Obviously, we know it sets up something completely different, but you have character growth, you have symbolism, you have every act is strong just from a, film standpoint. But here is somebody that was born with every kid, didn't have a want in the world, right? You're an only child of one of the smartest people on the planet, and all these things. And now he has a sense of, now, is that vision, as you mentioned, which way is it going to go and how's it going to work? We don't know, and he doesn't know, but he's decided what kind of man he wants to be. And Jensen mentioned, what's your legacy? And I think those are very powerful things, because we all have the legacy of our fathers, the legacy of who we are. And somebody that has all the gifts and that can be given to somebody to start feeling, okay, this is the direction I want to take my life and my company, and use it. And I felt that was his awakening. And it just really is like, and then I am Iron Man, and boom, right to Black Sabbath. And it was like, yes, like you're kind of like, boom, let's go. Like, you're kind of pumped when it cuts quickly to that. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's change the world.
Yeah, I love
Hey,
that.
Scotty, can I
that.
say one more thing? Nick, that was great.
Yeah.
And I love that purpose, and all leaders need purpose. And so whoever's listening out there, I've got several men and women who have spoken into my life, and they have all helped me shape and reshape that purpose over the years. And so if you're listening to this, you need that. And so all of us need a Jensen in our lives, for somebody to ask us the hard questions, where Jensen said, the man who has everything yet has nothing. We need to hear that. And then we need to have somebody, and hopefully not on their deathbed, but sometimes it takes that, for somebody like Jensen to look up in our eyes and say, don't waste your life. And so my closing thought, and I guess quote from this movie for our listeners out there, would be what I got from it, which was hilarious that I got it in the first part of the movie, which is, don't waste your life. And as Nick said, find your purpose. And however you have to find your purpose, do that.
Man, that's a It's a great way to close. And I think that's so great. The idea that what are you wasting your life on? Like if you are walking through life and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I have an idea, but I just, what I'm doing leaves me feeling empty or your purpose. What are you walking into? Where's your influence going? What type of influence are you having? What a great way to kind of close it out. So for everybody who decided to click on this podcast, either on purpose or by mistake, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Marvelously Uninformed. I hope you guys enjoyed our dive into the Marvel universe for this first film and found some valuable leadership lessons along the way, despite our lack, or some of us, I should say, lack of superhero credentials. If you guys had fun or just thought we were utterly ridiculous, just please subscribe, share the podcast with your friends. We love to hear what was right, if anything at all. And we would love to know what was wrong. So let us know any insights you guys have about what we covered today. Who knows? Maybe we'll explore your favorite superhero next time. So until then, keep embracing your inner leader. And remember, even the most unlikely characters can teach us a thing or two. Stay marvelous and hopefully more informed than us. We will catch you guys on the next episode, The Incredible Hulk.